Abby Sangmeister, owner of Evolving Whole and therapist. Okay, this has been in the works for a long time, and I've been trying to write it up, and I just get stuck in how to write this blog post. And so now that I've gotten into this vlogging thing, still working it out, trying to figure out like the best spot and all of that stuff. Anyway, this is something that I've been wanting to come on and talk to you guys about for a while because it's so important and it's really hard. It's how do you find a therapist, right? I had someone tell me that I curse too much, but right, how the fuck do you find a therapist? It is not easy. I don't think it is, and I'm a therapist. And I can remember looking for one years ago, and I was like, how do you even do this? I think more now people talk about going to therapy, so it might be a little bit easier, but it's still not easy, right? And so here's how I think the best way I can kind of describe this is to compare it to dating, right? And maybe you haven't dated in a long time, you've been married, you've been in a relationship for a really long time, and maybe you forget what dating is like, okay? And I swear dating has gotten harder now than when we were younger or generationally. It's a tough world out there. Okay, so how do you find a therapist? Let's think about this in dating. And this goes for like any type of practitioner. I feel like you can kind of apply it the same way. So it's funny, I was like, there should be like a dating app for like therapists to meet clients. There is kind of one out there. I tested it as like pretending to be the client. There's some things that they need to work on. So if you're an app developer, reach out to me. Let's make this happen. Anyway, finding a therapist. The first thing is ask your friends, right? So if you're single, you ask your friends, you know any other single people? Here's what I'm looking for. So actually let me back up. The first thing maybe you should do is come up with like what's important for you in finding this therapist. Like what are the important pieces that person has? Does it matter if they're a social worker? Does it matter if they're a professional counselor? Does it matter if they're a marriage and family therapist, psychologist? Those are all slightly different. Does it matter where they went to college, right? For some people, that's very important. I know, like I have a degree from University of Penn. I have people reach out to me because they appreciate my Ivy League degree. Does it matter if they're male, female? Does that matter? Does their religion, does their ethnicity, does their age? You know, like what's important for you? Does their, the number one thing is, do they work with what you are going to therapy for? So if you are someone who's looking for a trauma therapist, you may not want to go see the marriage and family therapist if they don't have trauma training or that's not their specialty or their niche, right? Maybe there's a specific intervention that you're looking for. Maybe you've heard of EMDR, so you want to find a therapist that has EMDR. Maybe you have no idea, and that's okay too, because you can ask those questions in your consultation. Okay, so now you go to your friends and you're like, I kind of want to start therapy. Do you know anyone? And here's the thing. A lot of your friends have probably been to therapy and they're not telling you, right? Or they have a friend that's a therapist. Or they've heard of someone, right? So ask your friends. Get those names. Look them up. I'm all about Google for this, right? See if they have a website. Do they have a business Facebook or Instagram, social media? Do they have like a Psychology Today or Good Therapy or something that you can read up a little bit on them? Then call and set up a consultation if that person meets some of your things. Now, just like dating, you're not going to find the perfect therapist, right? We don't always find the perfect person. There are some things that are negotiables and others that are non-negotiable, right? And you might not even know that until you interview a couple of therapists too. That's why I'm all about the free consultations. to ask those questions, and you don't have to decide on the spot. You can always call back and schedule, right? But also no pressure. Sometimes you don't want to wait too long because we can book up pretty fast. All right, let's say your friends are awful matchmakers, right? Because I've had some awful friends that have been awful matchmakers. I'm like, who, what, like, how, like, yeah, no. So what do you do next? Online dating's a thing, right? So how can you online date? One, if you really want to use your insurance, call your insurance company, get a list. And then I'm all about doing the research, because they're just going to give you a list of practitioners that work and network with them. And they're not going to say, oh, this one does CBT and this one does EMDR and this one's person-centered and this one's somatic. They might not have that listing. They might not know if the person has any openings. I hear a lot of times that that's often the thing, or there's a long wait list, which is why I kind of gear people, look for self-pay, look for private practice practitioners. I mean, not all of us have availability either, but I think there's a little more flexibility, and then you can always bill your insurance company, submit a bill to your insurance company and get reimbursed. Of course, I think that's the best way, because you're not with someone who's just trying to put you on a conveyor belt, right? So what's the next thing? So online, maybe you just hop on good old Google and search therapist near me or therapist in New Jersey, or maybe you make it more specific because you want a therapist exactly in your town. Maybe you don't want a therapist in your town. Maybe you're looking for like anxiety therapist, so you type that into good old Google. Maybe you go on Psychology Today, Therapy Den's amazing, Therapy Tribe's another one. I think Good Therapy. There's a couple different ones out there. Sometimes you will see the same therapist across the board. And you can put in different search criteria. So just like if you've never done online dating, here's a little, teach you a little bit about that, but you can put criteria in there. Maybe you're looking for someone that takes your insurance. Maybe you're looking for teletherapy only. Maybe you were looking for someone who specializes in a specific area. Maybe you're looking for premarital counseling, right? Doesn't mean every marriage and family therapist does that, you know? And also there are LPCs who may do premarital counseling, right? So you can like kind of search your criteria. And then again, you do your research. So you can use Google, like I said. There's some of these websites that you can use. I've had people reach out to me who were not necessarily maybe a good fit, and I have people that I've worked hard to network with that I can refer to, right? So even if you have that free 15-minute consultation with someone, and you're like, I'm not vibing, do you have any other recommendations? Other people that you can ask could be your chiropractor, your doctor, your massage therapist. Ask people in your community, do they know anyone? I try hard to network. I'm not the best at it. I'm working on it, but I try hard to network with other professionals, right? Because you never know who might have a good fit, and you really want to find someone that works within your niche, right? That specializes in what you are looking for, right? I have a ton of experience across the board actually, but there are areas that I no longer want to focus on. Not that I don't have that expertise, or maybe there's areas I don't have that expertise and I'm not taking that client. I refer out. What's the next step? So even if we're not doing a blind date, hopefully you get a chance to like look at the therapist online, whether it's, like I said, any of those websites or their own website. Maybe you get a chance to do a free consultation. Maybe you're already vibing with them and you're like, nope, booking my first appointment. That's great too. I have my business Instagram, which I think that helps people. The reason why I've done that was because I want to reach more people, obviously, but also if a potential client finds me on there, they can kind of see what I'm about. So what's next? You schedule your first appointment. You're ready. You're like, this person I think is a good fit. I'm gonna go on a date with them, right? This is not, you're not dating your therapist. It's not allowed. So you schedule that first appointment. You show up. You may be super anxious. You may have never been in therapy. It is definitely not like any TV show or movie. At least what I do is not. So go in with an open mind. You could have a list of questions. If you are someone who's more nervous, you can even ask the therapist, hey, can you just ask me questions? And it depends. Some do a very, like have a specific intake form. Me personally, I kind of flow and kind of get those answers as we go along. And it might take multiple sessions to do like an official intake, where other people sit down and they've got their notebook and they ask you very, very specific questions, right? Some of that might be like your health history, your mental health history, some other things that will be important. Personally, I like that to kind of unravel a little bit. I ask some very important questions up front, and then we kind of go from there and kind of let it flow. So now you're in your first session. See how it feels. It might take a little bit of time to build rapport, right? So when you're on a date, now the difference about this versus dating is you're not really gonna ask your therapist personal questions. You might ask certain other questions, like again, about like the interventions, like have they worked with someone who has panic disorder, or maybe you don't even know what your diagnosis is, which is totally fine. You know, and you can ask those questions, but really this time, the intake or the first session is all about you, which does not usually happen on a date, right? So you get like this chance to sit back, relax, and then see how you feel. Now, if you're not sure, just like dating, what do? You schedule a second date. You know, if it's not a good fit, there's no problem in, you know, either at the end of that session or emailing or calling if you're nervous, like, hey, this just wasn't a good fit. Ghosting, just like dating, not cool. Ghosting a therapist, not cool. Because I know I do. I wonder what happened to you. Like, I'm just concerned. Like, hopefully they're safe. Hopefully they're finding someone else. And I would rather like talk through it and help you find someone. That's me personally. And I've done that on dates before. I'm like, you know, we're not a good fit, but I might know someone who is. Yes, I've done that. So you kind of go out a couple times. You make a couple appointments and you see how it is. Just like with dating, maybe it's some other part. You're like, this is not vibing right. And you can give your therapist that feedback. Here's what I like about our sessions. Here's what I don't like. I don't feel like we're making progress. That communication is important. Guess what? When you're practicing that communication with your therapist, it's also probably an area that you need to practice in the rest of your life. So it's just good practice. So how to find a therapist. One, kind of think about what is important to you in your therapist. You know, is gender important? Is age important? Is what they specialize? I always think that's pretty important. I would put that almost at the top. Is, you know, what are some other criteria? Whether they're in person or teletherapy. Maybe you're like not sure about the teletherapy thing. I always say give it a try. You will be honestly surprised as to how comfortable, how convenient, and how successful you can be doing telehealth, teletherapy sessions. I think even the outcomes for me with all my clients have been better. Let's see, some other questions. So have your list, ask those questions, you know, and there might be some things that you weren't necessarily sure if you would like or not like. So you interview that person, you have that consultation. All right, so you figured that out. You ask your friends for some recommendations. You ask other healthcare, other professionals that you might see that you already have a relationship with. Who do they recommend? And you can always go to your good old insurance company if you want to use insurance, or you can try online, right? So there's a couple websites you can simply Google, Or you can go to some of these websites and see, you know, who's out there, who's in your area that are taking people. And I highly recommend giving, you know, doing a little research or read their website. What does it sound like? Does it sound like it's a good fit? Have a consultation, have a couple of sessions with that person, and just get started, you know? And building rapport is the most important. So if you're really feeling like that therapist isn't listening to you, or like it's just not a good match, it's okay to let that person know and move on, right? Just like dating. We go out with someone a couple times and we're like, no, red flag. You kind of keep it moving. If you're like, all right, kind of vibing, my sessions feel kind of good, I still might not be sure because it's a little awkward sometimes because I'm talking about myself and I'm not used to that, and we're digging deep into things because it's different than dating. We're going to dig deep into things, right? Just keep going for it, right? Another thing is, I don't think you want to date two therapists at the same time, right? There are some times that is important, and I think that's important to let your therapist know, but the same thing with like dating. If you're not all in with one person, you can't ever really find out. So a lot of times with therapy too, if you're seeing two therapists for exactly the same thing, it gets a little muddled and confusing. But if it's something where maybe you're seeing a therapist for marriage and family, and you're working with your partner, but you're seeing someone else individually, that can work too. Some therapists won't do marriage and family and do individual. So that depends. For me, I love doing couples counseling and seeing each person that's in that relationship individually also. But I know there's other practitioners that don't like to do that. So just some thoughts on how to find a therapist. If you have other suggestions, comment below. If you have other questions, like how else can I find a therapist, like I'm really getting stuck, comment below. If you like this, thumbs up it. If you want to share with other people who feel stuck finding a therapist, please do. And again, you can almost take the word therapist and you can say, I'm looking for a psychiatrist, I'm looking for a personal trainer, I'm looking for a obstetrician, I'm looking for a family doctor, I'm looking for a pediatrician, you can substitute those words and all of this will work, right? So it's very important for you to get out there, find your right person, right? And you may be with them and happy for a long time. All right, that's it. Have a great day, guys.